Long-time Sai Baba devotee Sharon Sandweiss of California. She knows firsthand the power of Sai Baba's love.
He loves all the members of our family, whether they, all the world, in fact. We don't have to be, he doesn't care if we're devotees or not. Well, one of our daughters once asked Baba, how can we get close to you because you're so far away, Baba? He said, talk to me all the time. Give me your pain. What does that mean to give him our pain? We're told that we're not the body, but while we're in there, we're suffering. But maybe we just have to surrender it to him. All of a sudden, Baba materialized a ring, and it was for me. And then he said, oh, that's the name of God. And then when we were at the ashram, a friend said, you know what your ring says? It says, I am. It's amazing. So we call this the God ring. He motioned to the door, and I said, oh, Swami, I don't want to leave you. He said, you're not leaving me. I'm coming with you. I'm in you, within you, around you, giving support, giving courage, giving love. We can never be separated. I live in your heart. I live in your heart.
The first time Sharon Sandweiss was on Souljourns was in 2004, along with her husband, Dr. Sam Sandweiss. And what a Sai Baba family they have turned into, hosting Californians in their San Diego Sai Baba Center for 47 years. This video talk was produced by the Sri Sathya Sai Baba Center of Manhattan, recorded in the fall of 2021. And Souljourns, of course, is very happy to share it with you now.
Before I begin, I'd like to say a few words to Swami. Dearest Baba, thank you for your motherly love, for bringing us together like a family and celebrating you and your birthday. And speak through us and act through us so that we can radiate more and more of your love. Dear brothers and side brothers and sisters, thank you for the invitation. It's so wonderful to be here on such a happy celebration. And actually, the month of November is a very celebratory month because there's so many festivals and activities going on. It's actually book-ended by festivals of light because it starts with Diwali at one end, and it just happens that Hanukkah is during the month of November this year, and is also the Festival of Lights. So we have the Diwali, then we have the Khanda Bhajan, where we're sending spiritual and holy vibrations out into the atmosphere, and Baba says that it actually purifies the atmosphere. Then that's followed by Ladies' Day tomorrow, which is a very important holiday. Baba said that this day will be celebrated for eons. That means forever almost, just on and on. So, and he said it's so important to celebrate the power, the glory of women. Then we have the birthday next month, which of course is so happy. And as Sarita said, it's our birthday, our spiritual birthday also. So that's very joyful. And then it culminates in Thanksgiving, which is the best holiday because it requires no gifts. It's just a day of offering gratitude and thanks for all the bounty that we receive. And I don't know, you might feel as I do, very grateful that we've come through the last year and a half, which has been challenging for most of us. We've weathered the COVID storm, we've weathered a political storm, and those storms are still raging a little bit. But I think in New York especially, it looks like you're actually coming out the other end, and so are we in California. But it was difficult because people were isolated. You were removed from family and friends, from the Sai community, except online. Kids were learning from a screen, which was not easy, especially young children. Some people were out in the COVID active essential workers, doctors, nurses, and others were out there exposing themselves every day. So we are grateful that we're here, that we were resilient, that we were lucky, that we're still here and healthy. And I think it's partly due to Baba's blessings. He blesses us, and he gives us the strength and the courage. He's not giving us the COVID, but he's giving us the strength and the courage to be able to endure whatever we have to endure in life. And he keeps on telling us that's not who you are, that body. You are that Atmic self. I love that French philosopher who said that we are not humans, beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So we have weathered a lot. And there has been a lot of suffering by other people. And how do we understand suffering? Well, one of our daughters once asked Baba, how can we get close to you because you're so far away, Baba? He said, talk to me all the time. Give me your pain. What does that mean to give him our pain? Because we're still in the body, although we know we're told that we're not the body, but while we're in there, we're suffering. But maybe we just have to surrender it to him and keep listening, knowing that we are not only this form, that we are something beyond, beautiful, great. He says this human being is just, human life is sacred. I remember I once had a very, very, very painful bursitis in my shoulder at the ashram. That was years ago, maybe in the 70s. And we had forgotten to bring our analgesics. We didn't even have aspirin with us. And you couldn't go into the Prashanti Puta party because it was a sleepy little village. They didn't have what they have now. And so I was suffering with it. And then Baba called us in. And I blurted out, Baba, do we have to suffer in order to get realized? Now, I knew nothing about realization. I still don't understand it. And I don't know how many of us really do, but that's what popped into my head, the suffering. And Baba was so sweet. And he looked at me so compassionately. He said, oh, do you have a pain? Yes, Mommy, my shoulder. And he said, oh, I will help. And he patted it 3 times. He said, it'll get better. I'll help. It didn't get better right away. It went on for a few days, but I felt better just knowing that he was there and he was aware, and I'm talking to him about it, and he's responding in my heart because he resides in our heart. He really says he's within our breath. So that's how close we are, he says. Baba is the center of our household. He's the center of our heart. He's the center of our household. Our family had a very beautiful experience of that. It was the first time, well, we have 4 daughters, and we have taken them to India with us many times. But this was the first time that our daughters had an interview with Baba, and they were in their teens, and they were very self-critical. They said, oh, Baba's not going to like it. He's going to criticize. We're not as disciplined as those students. They watch a student sitting there for hours, and he said, oh, and we're not meditating. We're not doing the things that maybe he thinks we should do. And you know how we can be so hard on ourselves, even though Baba says, love yourself, love who you are, your divine self. But as children, and they do become self-critical, and we as adults do the same thing. We should be more gentle with ourselves. At any rate, so he called us into the interview room, and then he ushered us into the inner room. There was another attached room, which is smaller. It was behind a curtain, and he stayed in the outer room, and the girls were very nervous, and they huddled away in the corner away from Baba's chair. And so we're waiting, what is going to happen? And all of a sudden, the curtain pulled apart, and Baba popped his head and he said, boo, like that, boo, and startled us. And then he laughed and we laughed. And then he said, come close, come on, gather close, like family. And so we all sat around his chair, and he was so playful, so sweet, so kind, so interested in them, just as we as parents should be interested, asking them, how are you and what are your interests, and wanting to listen to them and affirming them. When one said, oh, I have bad thoughts, Baba, he said, oh, bad thoughts, but good girl, I will help. And then he talked about the mind and becoming a mastermind, controlling the mind. And then another one said, oh, I have anger. I get angry. He said, not anger, just action, reaction. I will help. Just like that. So affirming, just showing us how to be with our children, to be supportive and positive. And he would say, good girls, good father, good mother, things like that were so sweet, but being so playful. But the thing that stood out to me in that was how he is the center of our home, our lives. heart and our lives, and also that he will pop into our lives. He will surprise us when we least expect it, when we're needing it, when we're praying to him or asking him for a sign, and then all of a sudden, boom, boo, he'll just come into our lives, maybe for a phone call or a book or something that we read, something that happens, a song that we hear, and we say, "Oh, Baba, you're with us. You're with me. You hear me. You know me." So we have to always look for that. So today, I would like to briefly share my spiritual path, initial path to Baba, which took a few years, and then describe some of the experiences I've had and the lessons that I've learned. Because every experience, every interaction was a very deep lesson. Like all of life is a lesson, is a lesson. This is a school of life, but with him particularly, I think there are a few lessons that are just the strongest that just pop into my head that are really primary. And one, the most primary, of course, is that he says that divinity permeates all creation, everywhere. It's immanent everywhere. And of course, that includes us. And then he tells us we have that spark within us, that little light that within us, and that it becomes dulled and dim, and we forget who we are over the years as we mature. And then he's here to remind us of who we are. He says, "You're Atma Swarupa." And so it's a constant reminder that we have forgotten this little light of ours has to be brighter. And how do we do it? Well, he tells us that we have to engage in the world. He doesn't. I was so afraid that my husband would want to go off into the forest or desert someplace after meeting Baba, but no, he doesn't encourage that at all. He says you engage in the world, and that's how you learn. You actually acquire wisdom through experience, hopefully, and you practice with, of course, CIA. I think it's constant integrated awareness of our who we are as we have our experiences in life, and we're like little rough gems, rubbing against each other, of course, in the family and in the marriage. What could be more intimate? And you're constantly, the ego, this thing we call the ego rears up, and then all the desires rear up, and then all the enemies of the mind, anger, jealousy, all of that rears up, and we're constantly moving against each other, smoothing and working. And that's the whole process of life. He says to be divine, you have to become refined. And so this is the process. The ego is rubbing in the family and work, wherever we are, is constantly in the Psi organization. There's plenty of opportunity for that. We know the egos are everywhere. We all have them. So it's a process until finally, hopefully, we're just going to shine. We're just going to be beautiful diamonds, just reflecting his love. That's the ultimate. And he does say that the blemishes of the heart have to be washed by the moral life and doing one's duty. So that's what we have to do. I think he told, we just read this last week at our meeting, to Jack Hislop. He wrote, "The best method of spreading Vedanta is to live it. There is no other royal path. We have to live it. Life is a game. We have to play it." So we are working on that. We're constantly working on this, and we have to be reflective, as Sarita said, and the birthday is a perfect time to do it. And then we also have to have confidence. We have to have confidence that we will succeed. And he has said his mission will succeed. He will avert whatever disaster is going to affect humanity, and he will usher in the golden age. We have to believe that. So he says, cultivate nearness to me in your heart. I will become a living presence, and then I will give you protection and direction. So that's what he tells us. And so we just have to work on ourselves constantly. It's a constant activity. Sam and I once, we were very concerned about the world, the state of the world, and there's so much like exploitation and sadness and suffering. We said, Baba, the world is having so many problems now. Will you save the world? And he said, the world is good. It's the mind of man that's the problem. And then he paused and said, half seva, half save. Half seva, that's our part. It's like a partnership that we have with God almost, that we do our part and then he's going to come in and rescue us and save us. I love the quote by Rumi. Many of you probably know this one. Yesterday I was clever and I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise and I'm changing myself. So that's the whole process, working on ourselves, being inward and thinking about it. So I will start telling about my early days. Now, you've heard Sarita talked about Sam, my husband, who, as long as I've dated and known him, he was always asking, is there a miracle? What is there a God? What is this amazing universe that we are living in? What is the meaning of it? What is the cause of it? He was always asking that. He was consumed by those questions. When we met Indra Devi and all she could talk about, the yoga teacher, all she could talk about was Baba, 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 Sam was on the plane within a few months with Indra Devi for a whole month. Here I was with 4 young daughters. We had twins who were 5.5, 2.5, and a 1-year-old. Poor little Judy was only 1 year old. And there's Sam is off, and I'm almost having, not a heart attack, but I'm almost developing an ulcer. I remember that because I was so nervous and worried. And where is he? What is this whole thing about? Remember in 1972, there was no Google. There was no way of looking up information. There were very few books about Sai Baba. Sam's book, Holy Man and the Psychiatrist, is one of the first that really, there were a few others that were circulated in the US and other places. So I think someone may have given me Man of Miracles. I can't remember, but it wasn't enough. And Sam did write letters home, but I was so nervous. What would happen? Would he become one of those very pretentious, beatific people, those fake, phony people spouting platitudes about God and divinity? I mean, what would happen to him? Would he want to just stop working and supporting us? I was so nervous and worried the whole 4 weeks. When he returned, he was transformed. He stepped off the plane. He said, you are God. I'm God. Everything is God. And now our lives are going to change forever. And they're going to have more meaning now. What are you talking about? It was a process for me to try to understand, because he saw something that transformed him, and he became kinder, softer, more peaceful. More peaceful, especially. He got rid of his old his fast Porsche, his motorcycle. He got an old Jeep. He became a vegetarian. So there were a lot of changes within a short while, and I wanted that peace. I wanted to have that experience, but I was scared to go. But he said, no, you have to come with me. You have to experience this with me. And I knew that for the sake of our marriage. And also I was so curious. Imagine leaving our 4 young daughters. Fortunately, we had good care. We had his secretary and his mother, but still it was very nerve-wracking for me going to this strange place. And we didn't know. He said, oh, don't worry, you'll stay in a nice hotel. Oh, yeah? we took that bumpy dirt road for hours. And then we ended up in Prashanti, a Puda part in Prashanti we just had a thin little mattress, and we weren't prepared, but we survived, and it was very rugged, no windows, and cats jumping in and out of the window, but Baba spoke to us, took us in 3 times, and he was very kind, and excuse me, and one of the interviews, he walked over to Sam's brother, Don. My sister, Nancy, is married to Don, Sam's brother, and they went on this trip with us, amazingly, but they did. And Baba walked over to Don, waved that hand. Now, this was the first time we had actually seen materialization, and very slowly, and he came out with a ring. We all gasped. Everyone gasped, and he gave it to Donald. I almost burst into tears. I was so upset. I was so angry at Baba, so hurt for Sam, because Baba had ignored Sam, who was his devotee, who loved him, and went to Don. Baba came over to me immediately, as if sensing my feelings, understanding my thoughts, and so sweetly and I'm sitting right below him, watching his hand, and again that very mysterious hand, and it just before my eyes, it filled up with a greasy mound of sugary candy, and he said, "Sweets for your children, so sweet." Well, I left in a state of confusion, really. So the next year, 73, we started the center with just a few people, and then it grew, and we took a few more trips over the years, but I was still having doubts. As a Jewish woman, I didn't understand divinity in a human form, because I didn't, there wasn't the Messiah that I believed in. So that was a very strange thing. And and then it was all the Sanskrit and the chanting, and Sam loved it all. He loved it all. And the meditation, he would meditate for hours, and I couldn't do it. I was so busy. And we did take one trip. You showed the video of the 75, the birthday. I think it was the 50th birthday. And we were there, and Sam was busy. We stayed with two other couples. It was awful. It was my birthday too, and Sam was busy showing his book. He was offering his book to Baba and talking to people about it, and I felt neglected, and I was sad, and Baba neglected me, and it was just, I was a complainer, I must say. And then at the last minute, we were out and we're waiting for Baba to come, and all of a sudden we hear a whirring. And then there's that helicopter slowly descending, and then we see that orange robe and that crown of hair, and it was so thrilling. You don't quite, I don't know if you could see from the video, it's an old video, 75, but it was so thrilling to me, and that lifted my whole spirit. I was rejoicing like everybody, shouting and screaming, and then Baba descended and came out. But then we took another trip. We took brought our twin daughters, Ruth and Rachel, when they were 13. We did take our twin daughters, and Baba was very kind, and he brought us in to the back of the Purnachandra. It was a birthday. It was here comes Sam. It was the 55th birthday, and Baba was very sweet and talking to our daughters, the twin daughters, and myself, and then it blurted out, "Baba, can we do more?" Now, why would I say that? I was so busy with the family and the center and all the activities with children, and yet I was saying, can we do more? Because he was doing more. He's constantly doing more. He's constantly giving and serving, and with his hand, he doesn't just send it out with someone else. He personally delivers to people saris and gifts and food and just everything, and vibhuti constantly. So I blurted, "Can I do more?" He said, "Yes, I will give you the power, the strength, and the blessings." The power, the strength, and the blessings. That's what he will give us if we ask, can we do more? Because sometimes more is a little too much for us, but then he's going to give us the strength to endure, to do whatever we have to do. That was very powerful, those words. And I don't know what made me ask, but they're always in my mind. Yes, the power of the strength. So, okay, that went on for years. Finally, we went with our family, went to the 60th birthday. There were almost 1 million people. It was so crowded. There was no water, no electricity. People, you could barely breathe walking through the streets. And yes, and there was a planetarium that we went to, and then it didn't work, and it was everything. It was just so overwhelming. And I said, "Oh," and our daughters loved it. They were all with us, and they said, "Oh, it was like a camping trip." They laughed all night. Our neighbors were the Butts. We had the neighbors by the last name Butts, and so the girls laughed a lot about everything, and they were happy. Sam was just happy to be there, and I was the complainer. Well, then my mother passed away. My parents were not ever happy. My mother especially was very resistant to everything, the pictures and the incense and everything about Baba. But she would write letters saying, "Oh, your home is so much love, and the girls are so sweet and beautiful. But then she would come in front, but she died. And then Sam was going to India, and I said, I've got to go. Because initially I said, I'm not going back. I'll just love him from a distance. And then I went back and I said, okay, I'm going to stop complaining. And that was 14 years. And I must say that all that time I held on to Swami. I did not let go. I wanted that. He promises something that is so precious, that peace and meaning and this understanding of a deeper understanding of myself and the world. So it was just a beautiful promise. And I just wanted to feel that degree of devotion. I wanted to feel his love. I wasn't sure because I was so self-critical. Oh, I'm not meditating and I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. And I liked English bhajans instead of Sanskrit and so many, that self-criticism. So we went that, and Baba called me in first, which I thought, wow, but he ignored me completely and talked to Sam, and then we left. And then I was just, it was hot. It was a summer. We didn't have fans in our room at that time. And so I said, I'm going to go sit on a chair. We're all, when you're young, you're supposed to sit on the floor, on the ground. But when you're old and infirm, you get this, you can sit on a chair. So I wasn't old and infirm, but I said, I'm just going to be comfortable for a change. And he doesn't care anyway. So I crept in there in the early morning, the dark, and I sat in a chair. It was nice, even it was a hard metal chair, but it was nicer than the ground because my hips were hurting. So then all of a sudden it's quiet. And I think in those days, I don't remember that they played music actually in those days. And Baba lived in the temple. So he walked out of the temple and the sun was coming up behind him. The golden light of the sun was rising. And there were such dazzling rays of sunlight sparkling in his hair. And he was just so glorious. He was so beautiful. I was so comfortable. And then my heart opened up to him and I saw his divinity. He allowed me to see something that I hadn't seen for 14 years. So for those of you who are out there who are saying, oh, I'm still doubting, just hang on, because he will come. He will surprise you with that boo, with I'm here and I know you and I love you. So that was it. After that, it was peaceful. There was greater calm and unity in our family. We were more unified because of that. So we went to Baba with questions about the schools because we were worried that there was a lot of drinking, and we said, Baba, should we send our kids to private school? He said, no, the schools are all the same. He said, you have to talk to your kids. You have to listen to your kids. You don't understand what they're thinking. Here he was telling a psychiatrist's family, this is what you have to do with your kids. It's so easy as parents to tell them what to do. We have to ask them, how are you feeling? What is, get a sense of where their minds are. And so he was just telling us that. And then I was thinking, and I started saying, oh, Baba, if it were not for you. But he cut me off. He said, yes, if it were not for me, everything would be lost. Everything. If divinity had not come at this time, who knows? That was so, we both shuddered when he said that, because he said it was so much power. Everything would be lost. We don't know the full extent of it, but it was a very strong statement about how precious it is that we've lived at the time of the advent of the avatar. So that was the experience, and we know how his principles, divine principles, can help our kids to resist the peer pressure. And I would always say to the kids, your Atma Swarupa, your Prema Swarupa, when they would leave for school, just reminding them of who they are. So I would like to tell about a conference that I had attended. It was a conference for the overseas people, and I wanted a badge. So I went down to the office, the room where I was supposed to get it, and I gave my name, and the man there said, oh yeah, this is not spiritual. You don't have to go, you're the wife. And he wouldn't give me a badge. I was so indignant, but instead of standing up for myself and telling him all the things that I'm just as equal, and I do this and this and this, in the center and all the things, I felt like crying. I mean, that is typical of women. that we were intimidated easily. So I turned and ran away, and I was so angry. So I found Michael Goldstein. He gave me a badge. And at the last minute, all the delegates were going into the Purnachandra, and they were sitting facing Baba's chair. And so I was in the last row because I was one of the last ones. I came in, okay, I'm far away from Baba, but that's okay. I'm here and I've got my badge. Well, then all of a sudden, the music, because there was music now, and what happens, Baba's coming, the last row becomes the first row. So all of a sudden, I'm in the first row. Wow, this was a nice treat. And Baba's coming in, and guess who's with him? That man, I called him Mr. Meany. Mr. Meany was standing next to Swami, coming in down the row, down the aisle, on the red carpet. And then he looked at me and he stopped and he said, Mrs. Sandweiss. And he turned to Mr. Meany and said, this is Mrs. Sandweiss. And then he walked on. Can you imagine how gratifying that was? Probably not. But I was so happy. He was telling me so many things. He was saying, you are equal to your husband. This man that maybe didn't treat you properly. But also maybe you should have been stronger to speak up to him. You should have had more courage. He's constantly telling us, be like the lions. He has those lion statues. And I think we were there when he first installed them, many in the 90s, many years ago. And he was telling the students, you think this is just for decoration on the stage. No, this is to show you, this is who you are. You are lions, bold, brave, proud, strong. Know your identity and speak up, be firm, be bold. So he was telling me something. And then he gave me another lesson about that years later when we were with our daughters. He brought us all in and he went around the room asking everybody their name. What is your name? So all the girls and Sam. And then he came to me and I couldn't say my name. I said, Mom, like mother. That was my identity. And he said, oh, you worry about your daughters. You worry a lot about your daughters. He had once said that I'm attached. And I said, oh, is that bad, Baba? And he said, no, it's your duty. But that was when they were younger. This is now they're older. And I'm still, as a mother, we never, ever, ever stop worrying about our kids, I think, till we go to our grave. We have concerns for them. But anyways, he said, you worry about your mother. And then he waved his hand. And I said, yes, I worry, but it's my duty. It's my responsibility. He said, yes, responsibilities, yes. And then joy. He said, like joy. And then he waved his hand and out came a gorgeous Durga medal. I don't know if you can see this, a very beautiful medal. And he said, very special, Shiva Shakti, very powerful. Shiva Shakti, Durga. This is Durga. This is the goddess who sits astride the lion or tiger and fights the foes, the enemies, and is fearless. And she's such a wonderful goddess to identify with. And it was so beautiful. And he said, this will take away some of your worries. Well, I don't know. I still worry, but maybe less. But it's just it's nice. It's a reminder. Durga, this is who we are. We women, we are Durga. We have to have this strength and be fearlessness. And then about Durga, about a few years after that, we were in with Baba with our youngest daughter, Judy, who had been 1 when I first went to India. Now she was a mature young woman. And she started telling Baba about her problems. I have this problem and that problem. And he said, everything is a problem. The whole world is a problem. And he said, you have to say, this is good for me. This is good for me. And then you learn from it. Problems are your teacher. They teach you. You have to learn from them. And then finally, you might say, this was good for me. But we have to accept that these problems will come up constantly in our lives. And then that wonderful hand again, and now came a beautiful Durga for Judy. And he said, you are divinity. You are complete in yourself. You are in other words, he's saying you are everything. You don't need someone to complete you. You are complete. And it was a beautiful Durga that he said, you are like, he didn't say this, but I was like, he was saying, you are divinity in full bloom. And know that, and have self-respect, and be confident and strong, and know that these problems will come, and we just have to face them, and he will give us, we talk to him and we ask for the help, and he will come through and give us that help. So that's Durga. That's another experience. Okay, now I'm going to talk about my God ring. This is a ring that Baba made. Sam and I were in with him. I don't even remember when. And all of a sudden, Baba materialized a ring, and it was for me. And we looked at it, and Sam said, "Oh, it's Arabic." And Baba looked at the ring. He said, as if, "What did I create?" No. And then he said, "Oh, that's the name of God. The name of God." So then we looked again at the ring. We left. Okay, it's the name of God. It's Arabic, and it's the name of God. Then we started looking at the ring, and we saw. I'm unfortunately, I'm not high tech, so I could have shown you the video, the slides, but it would have been too disruptive for me. But I could have shown you that if you look at it one way, it's like a stylized Om. If you turn it upside down and look at the writing another way, it's like an EL, which in Hebrew is God. So and then when we were at the ashram, a friend said, "You know what your ring says?" We said, "Well, it's the name of God." She said, "It says upside down, it says, I am." Very clearly, it says, I am. It's amazing. So we call this the God ring. It's got almost everything, doesn't have the cross in there, but it has a lot of religions in there. Then we were invited, Sam and I were invited to St. Petersburg for a conference and a camp. And I have to tell you, the camps there are not like our fancy, beautiful camps with beautiful lodging and nice kitchens. And no, it was very little rundown and kind of drab. But people, there was so much spirit. People had come from all over Russia for this conference. And we know the Russians have been very dedicated. They do a lot of seva. We've heard that they go into the mountains and they do a seva project, a medical camp for a whole week. But here they some of these people there at this camp had come on trains for maybe a day and a half. Just they were coming from the surrounding countries that end with stan, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and they were Muslims, but they were Baba devotees, and most of them were, in fact, almost all of them were women. And they were here, they were at the camp, even though their husbands were very unhappy about it. But these women, I give them credit, they were very strong. And they said, "No, we love Swami." And they were there, and they were often cooking. Well, when they heard about this ring, and I forgot to tell you one thing about the ring. I'm going to back up. Before St. Petersburg, one last thing about the ring. We were doing a service project for a relative in Michigan, and we were checking out of the motel. This was before St. Petersburg. And I put my hand on the counter, and the woman behind the desk, this was an area of Detroit that has a lot of Muslims. And she said, "You know what your ring says?" And I said, "Yeah, the name of God." She said, "Allah." It says Allah. I said, "Oh, Islam." And she said, "No, it is the name of God. It's the name of God." So we knew finally the mystery of this ring. So now we're back in St. Petersburg, sorry. So we're in St. Petersburg, and I told the story of the ring, and we showed on slides. There we had the slides showing it, Allah. Well, a woman from Kazakhstan came up to me, and she hugged me and kissed me and swung me around, and she was a very ample-bodied woman. She said, "Swami loves Muslims. Swami loves us. She loves Islam. He loves Islam." And then she took a picture of this ring, and off she went. So that was the end of that. Then months later, we were at the ashram during the summer, and a woman comes up to me and says, "Oh, do you remember me?" And I didn't remember her because she had slimmed down and she looked like a different person. I didn't recognize her. And she said, "I'm the woman that took the picture of your ring." "Oh, right." She said, you won't believe this. I made a picture and I enlarged it and I put it on the wall. And my husband kept on looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. And then finally one day he said, okay, I'll go to India with you to see Sai Baba. And she's continuing the story. And then, this is the best part. And then Swami was coming by and he was sitting, my husband in the front row. Baba came and stood in front of my husband. And my husband just broke into tears. And he became a devotee, just like that. And I cannot tell you how happy I was to hear. And he had also come with these were some of his sisters from Kazakhstan and cousins. And so he had a group of men with him. And so all of them probably became, I don't know about the others, but he became a devotee. And that was all because of a little ring that Baba gave a Jewish woman saying Allah. And that's what happens with Baba. It's just it's like a ripple in the lake. You know, it ripples out. We affect everybody. So that's the story of the God ring. And also continuing the Russian story, not really regarding the ring, but we were in an interview with a lot of Russians, and they were from St. Petersburg actually, and they were there because their teacher was a singer, and he was a beautiful singer. He sang us. We were in with them, and they were singing a song. And then Baba went around the room. Are you Russian? Are you Russian? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? And then he came to me and he said, well, are you Russian? I said, no, Swami. Of course he knows I'm not. But then he said, oh, yeah, my grandparents are from Russia. And then he said, there's the link. We are all linked together. We're all connected. We're interconnected. So he was just making a point that it doesn't matter where we're from, what our religion is. We're all one. We all breathe the same air. So I'm going to talk about a few ways and Baba has of correcting us. This is kind of an embarrassing story, but I do tell it because he's correcting us by little ways. And it's very intense when you were in India. I don't know if any of you, probably some of you have had that experience with Baba, whether he ignores you or doesn't, or does something that affects you. So this was back in the old days when there was just sand. It wasn't cyclone hall, and I don't even think there were barriers or anything. You would just line up. So I was in a line talking to women, and one woman, I think from California, was saying, oh, I don't want to go home. My husband is there with the kids, and I want to stay with Swami. And my judgmental, critical self said, what? Don't you feel guilty that you've left they were relatively young kids with your husband? Don't you feel, because she had been there for about a month, don't you think? So right away, imagine I'm judging and I'm not criticizing, but questioning. And then another woman next to us had said, I'm going tomorrow. How do I get an interview? Tell me, how do I get an interview? She knew I had had an interview. And so I said, I don't know. Maybe you go like this or hold out a letter. I said, I don't really know. It's up to Swami. So then all of a sudden he's coming in unexpectedly early. So there's a mad dash. We ran like crazy. Well, all the lines broke off and we were sitting in the front row, which was great. So Baba's coming by. He walked and the woman who wanted the interview was maybe 2 people up or something beyond me. And he ignored me completely, of course. And then walked down and then came to the woman. She jumped up, almost grabbed his sleeve and said, interview, Swami, I need interview, take me in. I felt, oh my gosh, I never told that woman to do that. I never told her not to, but I never suggested that. Oh, I was so mortified and embarrassed. And Baba was very cool. Of course, he always is calm. And he said, to her, oh, you want an interview? And then he turned to me. She'll give. And then he walked on. Can you imagine how I felt? Because obviously he was correcting me. He was saying, I'm not one. I better watch how I criticize people, what I say to people, and not to be judgmental, and just hold my tongue a little bit and be more humble. And so it was difficult. He was kind of playful. Oh, you want an interview? She'll give. but also there's a little sharpness to it. And another time when we were with him and with the kids, I think, and he materialized. He said to me, "Fighting with husband." Now he says this to women. I don't think I've ever heard that he has said this to a man, fighting with wife. I don't know why he does it to women, but he's done it to, I know a few women he's done it to. The men might have an explanation, but we wouldn't like it. But he said, fighting with husband. I said, oh, maybe a little, because I thought that day, I remember I was running late and I was trying to do my sari and Sam was trying to talk to me and I just ran out in a hurry and I was kind of, I don't know, rude, just running out, just not being attentive. Maybe that was it. Maybe it's more than that. And then Baba said, oh, I said a little. He said, yes, from a small seed grows a big tree. So in other words, watch our words, because negative words harsh words can live in the atmosphere and be remembered for years sometimes. Some people never forget them. So then years later, I asked Baba, how can I become a better person? Because I was trying to think, how can I correct, refinement a little more? What should I do? And he said, are you fighting with husband? This was years later. Are you fighting with husband? With a smile. But also, it was a reminder. And I have a friend from years ago who had told us that Baba had said that to her, fighting with husband. And she said, oh, maybe a little. And Baba said, well, a little bit of spice. So maybe a tiny bit of friction, because there will be disagreements. We can't always be agreeing 100%. But we have to watch how we react to one another. Since Lady Day is tomorrow, I know you've had the celebration last week, but just to tell you, I was there the first Ladies' Day in 95. We had come the night before, and all of a sudden we heard a knock at the door in the evening, and guess who was there? You won't believe it. It was Mr. Meany, and he was carrying a sari, and he said, this is for Swami. This is for Ladies' Day. So show up at the temple, at the back of the temple, the temple, in early morning. So I didn't know what is Ladies' Day. So I quickly wrapped myself in the morning and ran down there in the dark. And the women are looking at me a little bit. And finally, one woman came and said, well, you've actually wrapped your choli around your shoulders, and you're not supposed to do that. Oh, okay. So I ran back to my room, got out the scissors. Fortunately, we had them, and I sliced down, the sari and rewrap. And Mrs. Rattenlau was there saying, come on, ladies, come on, get into a line. Mrs. Rattenlau is a woman, she and her husband have devotees for years, and she used to cook for Baba. And she was saying, come on, we're going to be the laughing stock of the men. Get into rows. And women don't like to be regimented. For some reason, we don't like to get into even lines. Men will do it more easily. But we finally did it, and the women were going to lead the whole ceremony. We were going to come in with this chanting and the instruments and the drums and the cymbals and everything. And we were going to parade in, which we did the back around the men's side into the Purnachandra. And then we call it the Purnasana. Our daughters named it the Purnasana. And we actually sat on, all of us with the saris, sat on the stage. And then Baba came in, and they were beautiful, beautiful saffron saris. So we were all ablaze in that color, that brilliant orange. And Baba was sitting in the chair, and it was like a love fest. We were loving him, and he was loving us. And he gave such a powerful, beautiful speech extolling women, the courage and the compassion and the wisdom and the devotion. He said there's nothing in the world that women cannot achieve, and that feminine birth is esteemable, adorable, and sublime. It was so powerful. And he's given, every Ladies' Day, he's given discourses like he had given them like that, talking about the importance of motherhood. But obviously it's very important for the men to hear and for the women to feel. Yes, that to be, and also to know our responsibility. I came to Baba wanting to do more, And so periodically I would say, Papa, what work should I do? What should I do? Because I wanted to do something more than just the save of the feedings, the things we did. He said later, after your daughters are married. Okay, so after the daughters are married, and I won't even go into that. There was a whole lot of saga about getting having our daughters married. But finally, I kept on asking Baba, well, what work can I do? And he said, soon I'll give you good work. Well, immediately my mind went, oh, wow, good work, something special. And so finally, I waited for it. It didn't happen. And then finally I went again a few years later, what work can I do, Baba? And he said, for you now, home and family. Home and family? That's what I'm always doing. But and then I went home and came home, and of course my dad was dying. Jack Hislop was dying at the same time. They were both the same age, I think, 95. That my dad always saying, I envy your devotion, to Sam. But he would say, I'm talking to God, but he's not listening. He was so steeped in Jewish liturgy, but he just, didn't have that personal relationship that we're able to feel for Swami. And Jack had it, of course. And then finally, my dad was dying, and he was taken to hospice. And at the end, when he was taken, he was saying, oh, love is the most important thing. And then he went to hospice. And at the last minute, he was lying there, and I think in a coma. We were talking to him. And then I remembered a few years earlier, Baba had given me some vibhuti, and he said, later. And he wrapped it up, and I took it home, and I put it in a drawer, and I forgot about it. I ran home and got the vibhuti, and I sprinkled it so gently in my father's mouth. And I said, Dad, this is for you. This is from Swami. He loves you. We love you. And then he passed away a little while later, but it was so powerful and beautiful. He loves all the members of our family, whether they, all the world, in fact. We don't have to be, he doesn't care if we're devotees or not. So on that note, maybe I'll conclude because it's getting late. And one last thing, we had one last interview with Bob, and we knew that it was going to be the last, and he was getting weak and he wasn't seeing many people. And so he motioned to the door, and I said, oh, Swami, I don't want to leave you. And I felt like grabbing his ankles, like kids grab their father's ankles. But I said, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go out there. He said, you're not leaving me. I'm coming with you. I'm in you, within you, around you, giving support, giving courage, giving love. We can never be separated. I live in your heart. I live in your heart is love. He's pure love, and he loves us all deeply. We can never be separated. So on that note, I would say, Baba, thank you for your grace, for letting me be part of your Advent, for being here tonight with such beautiful people. And I pray that you give us the strength to be able to stand to be able to endure whatever life storms will bring us. And thank you for giving us this wonderful time together. Jai Sai Ram.